Good evening and welcome to the Drive at 5 on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. I'm your host, Roman, and we have a great show planned for you today. Don't forget to stay tuned to IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station. After the Drive at 5 p.m., we have Warriors Talk with Rochelle at 6 p.m. with love and inspiration she spreads throughout the week and bring it back with a smile on your face. So make sure you stay tuned right here on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station for Warriors Talk. Tonight, my guest is the president and chief executive officer of Sterling Initiatives, LLC, and Sterling Medical Advice, LLC. He is a public health pioneer and is the best-selling author of There Are 72 Hours in a Day, Using Efficiency to Better Enjoy Every Part of Your Life. Please give a Drive at 5 welcome to Jeffrey Sterling. Welcome back to the Drive. Before you say anything, I have to give this disclaimer. Before we start, I am going to give a disclaimer and let people know any suggestions or input made on the Drive at 5, IntellectualRadio.com, iHeart radio station, or Dr. Sterling himself is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician. Please remember that as we go for a discussion regarding the COVID. Again, this is the disclaimer, and I repeat it one more time. Any suggestions or input made on the Drive at 5, IntellectualRadio.com, iHeart radio station, or Dr. Sterling himself is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician. Dr. Sterling, thank you for joining us. Dr. Sterling, you are here to address some of the concerns the Black community may have in taking the COVID-19 vaccine or even debating about it. My first question to you is what we in the Black community should know about the COVID-19 vaccine that they are not addressing in the mainstream media.
Well, let's not start with the mystery meat. Let's start with the main course. It's 95% effective. Let's not make it any more complicated than that. That's what we should be focusing on and discussing.
Okay, it's 95% effective, but why is there doubt that people should or should not take in the Black community?
It's okay to have doubts. I mean, people have concerns. So let's split the doubts into concerns and fears. So part of the population, we fear the unknown and we mock what we don't understand. Okay, so with that in mind, people are in the process of learning how to become better stewards of their own healthcare. And they get information from the closest and most convenient place to get it. Unfortunately, in as much as that may represent social media, there's tons of misinformation. In fact, social media is pretty well established, even including the, sad to say, but the White House, the most prevalent source of misinformation. So if you have a pot in which misinformation is present, and then it gets stirred up and reverberated by people who have either ulterior motives or who are inclined to fear or who just don't want to do it, then that becomes problematic. But again, let's cut through the noise. The fact of the matter is that these vaccines are 95% effective. And we have two vaccines that are 95% effective. The Chinese vaccines that are being used elsewhere in the world, the European-based vaccines used elsewhere in the world are not 95% effective. We are at a position now to where we actually have something that is even better than others in various parts of the world can get. And keep in mind, the flip side of that coin is that if there's a 95% solution on the table, that is desperately what we need, because there is almost an equivalent amount of risk that is targeted at our communities. Remember, when we talk about things like healthcare disparities, we're talking about the fact that 2 to 2.5 times beyond our representation in society via our population, we are being targeted figuratively by the vaccine, and we are being killed by the disease. So in as much as we have an enhanced need, we need to match that with a vaccine that actually appears to be incredibly effective at working. So in emergency medicine, I'm an emergency physician by training, we always say, don't let a potential side effect get in the way with a defined life threat. And that's the situation that these concerns fall under. The truth of the matter is that you can have your concerns, you can have your fears. We'll do our best to try to address them. And what you really should be concerned about is the fact that COVID-19 has taken out our community. Hundreds of thousands of deaths have now occurred in the United States, and in a disproportionate manner that's occurring in the African American community. So you can have your fears, but let's place them in the appropriate direction. And that should be toward the disease, much more so than toward the vaccine.
You mentioned there are outside the United States other vaccines. Can you name the other vaccines? Because I know there are 3 in the United States that vaccines that are here. One is Pfizer, the other one is Moderna and Moderna, and Moderna. I forgot the third one.
There's not a third. There's still some of the pipeline, but the 2 that have been approved are the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine.
Okay.
There's the Johnson one that's coming down the pipeline but hasn't gained emergency approval yet. So to answer your question, there's a Chinese vaccine, and they're marketing it to various parts of the world, and that's somewhere in the ballpark of actually below 80% effective. And I think it was even in the last couple of days, the Oxford vaccine has just been approved, which will be used primarily in Europe. And that's not as effective as the 2 American vaccines that are available to us. So the point of the matter is that the vaccines that are going to be available in the United States are the American vaccines. So the audience really doesn't have to be much concerned with what's happening elsewhere, other than to know that the vaccines that were produced here in the good old US of A are actually superior to those other ones. We're not going to be importing those vaccines for use here. We're going to be used the ones that have been developed here as part of Operation Warp Speed, and those that were produced in the United States that did not participate in Operation Warp Speed, like the Pfizer vaccine.
Can you repeat that again? Because to make it clear, you said that the vaccines overseas will not be imported to the United States, so people don't have to differentiate which one am I getting. Am I correct?
Pretty much. I mean, the point of the matter is that we're talking about this through the prism of public health and medical treatment, but there's an economic war that's being waged in terms of distributing these vaccines. So specifically, if you were to ask which vaccine will be seen in Africa, on that continent, for example, well, if they have purchase agreements with China, then Africa is going to be flooded with the Chinese vaccine. That's how it works. Because in the United States, we have such a preponderance of the disease. We have between 20 and 25% of all the world's cases and deaths. We need to sequester as much of the vaccine as possible for our own use here. So we're not going to be now. I just found out today that the pharmaceutical companies actually are exporting some of the vaccines that are made in the US outside of the United States, because our government did not purchase enough of the vaccine to keep it exclusively for domestic use. And that's part of the reason, and we'll talk about it, why the rollout of the vaccines has been so slow. But there are no purchase agreements to bring the Oxford or the Chinese vaccine here into the United States. The initial assumption was that as part of Operation Warp Speed, that the supply produced in the United States would be kept here for our use.
Let's discuss briefly in regards to the snail pace, because at first we were getting momentum, speed, and then now all of a sudden it's a snail pace regarding the rollout of the vaccine. Can you explain to us a little bit about that?
Well, I can refute your premise. I mean, who told you that this was going to be blown out of the water? Now, again, the pharmaceutical companies that came up with the technology to produce these vaccines, absolutely, they did so at breakneck speed. But I don't see where any of us should assume that the operational infrastructure put in place by the current federal administration matched that pace. You're talking about the syringes and the needles and the supply and the infrastructure such that vaccines could be given to 100 million people, which is what was being promised at one point in time. What have we seen? What have we seen mobilized in cities around the country to suggest that we actually were prepared to deliver vaccines in that mass amount? We haven't. And true to form, now that the vaccine is ready, you see perhaps in a ratio of 10 to 1, about 10 million, for every 10 million vials of vaccine that have been produced, only about 1 million of those vials is actually making it into arms of citizens across the country. So the operational infrastructure, just as was the case with the production of PPE and so many other things about the government's response to this, has been suboptimal and inadequate.
A Black woman by the name of Kazmika Corbett, praised as the key scientist behind the COVID-19 vaccine. Why we are not hearing more from her about the vaccine to calm the fears in the Black community?
No, actually we are. She's out there, but you just, once again, the opening sentence tells the story. One person. Can you imagine how hard it is for one person to make it through the noise and avoid being drowned out by all the drama that's occurring out here? The fact of the matter is that she is on a PR tour and speaking out whenever and wherever she could. She should be an incredible source of pride and information for all communities, but especially the African American community, because she has authored this. And for those of us that have concerns about representation in the process, this has been truly a success. African Americans specifically have had representation in production of this vaccine and oversight of the process. The National Medical Association, for example, has a COVID-19 task force where people are literally embedded in the process to make sure that we participated in the research studies, that our interests were heard and developed by us on the front end and followed through on the back end. Again and again, we're there. We are just being drowned out by the fears, the concerns, the noise, whatever you want to call it. So it's inaccurate to say that she's not out there speaking on it. It's just that the voice hasn't penetrated so much of the concerns that people have, unfortunately.
Well, a lot of, let's say, the Black media, we haven't got a chance to hear from her in a Black media sense. And I know she's doing a media tour, but it will be helpful if, she comes to some Black media and, drown out some of the concerns, like you said, because when you have two voices where it's kind of like this, when somebody says, look this way, we're supposed to look that way. And it drowns out the voice of what we should know about the vaccine. And to have this sister who should be praised is not getting the accolades that she deserves, especially from the Black community. You agree with that assessment?
I agree with the second half of what you're saying, but once again, I think that this is a new time for us. We are becoming more involved, and we've demonstrated that we can be more interested in our healthcare than we have been historically. However, that's a process. People are out here, you kind of migrate from reading memes on Facebook to learning how to read articles on Facebook, to Googling, to learning that you actually need to be focusing on websites from prominent physicians and scientists and the World Health Organization and the CDC and Health and Human Services, for example. So you have to graduate to understanding about how to curate information appropriately. So if people think that they're researching and getting information, they don't know how to do so. I bring that up because the truth of the matter here is that if we were doing that, then somebody might begin the conversation instead of just looking at memes that don't make any sense. You might just Google her name and find out where she is and what she has actually said. That's how you curate information. That's how you get good information. That's how you subject yourself less to fear mongering and those who have motives that involves providing misinformation. So we have some responsibility in this too, to learn how to go after the information that we want instead of just assuming that people are not out here providing that information. And once again, we're a country of over 320 million individuals, and to think that one person's voice isn't going to be a needle in the haystack is kind of unfair. I think that if you just go to the source, you will find her. And once again, I would actually specifically report one comment that you made. And, there's an entity called Black Coalition Against COVID-19. Okay. This Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 o'clock Central, there is a town hall meeting where she is present. She's there with Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci. She's there with the president of the National Medical Association. She's there with the head of the Office of Minority Health. She's there with the head of the National Black Nurses Association, et cetera, et cetera. She's there with the former Surgeon General. So there are opportunities like that that go on all day, every day. And if we aren't aware of those forums, that doesn't mean that it's not happening. It just means that we aren't aware of where to look to get the most accurate information or the information that we want. So it's sad that she doesn't have a better PR. I think it's fair to say that their PR campaign could be more effective in getting information disseminated far and wide, but the efforts are being made, and it's up to us, of course, and as you pointed out, it's up to us to judge whether or not those efforts are penetrating and being effective, but the efforts really are being made.
Can you give it? Is that form open to the public? Is it viral?
Yes, it is.
Can you
you go to my social media page, I'll be happy to. I'll tag you specifically on it, and then you can pass it on your page and get it disseminated in that way. It's a wonderful form. I actually posted it maybe 3 days ago as a way of helping my audience understand that this specific type of thing with this specific individual is ongoing, and this specific forum literally has every single individual that you would want to hear from in a position of authority. As I mentioned, Dr. Fauci's there, Surgeon General's there, the individual, the African-American individual who created, who is credited with playing an outsized role in creating the vaccine is going to be there, et cetera, and other stakeholders from our community. So these types of things have been happening and need to be better promoted and known about, because otherwise we will be criticizing the lack of information that's accessible to us.
Thanks. We'll be happy to share it on IntellectualRadio.com forum as well. There is a lot of information, as you pointed out, that is out there, and some people want to know what is true or false. What is the number one thing you heard that is false about the vaccine, and why people should not believe it?
The number one thing that's false is that it has a side effect profile that we should be concerned about, period. This is an incredible, I must admit, I came into this, I have no disclaimers, nothing to disclose that represents any type of conflict of interest. I have no reason to be a swill for the pharmaceutical or community, none of that. I came into this looking to criticize this thing as best as I could. This is truly a technological advance in science. And for a group of us, the American community, not the Black community per se, but for a group of us that are willing to embrace every new iPhone every 12 months or Galaxy or any other technological advance and be so concerned about a scientific leap forward, it's just kind of befuddling. The truth of the matter is that they have outdone themselves, and we were sufficiently represented enough to know that our community is not going to be disproportionately affected by side effects. So the answer to your question is that not only is this 95% effective, but there are no significant side effects about which to be concerned. Now, when I say no side effects, I mean in terms of things that are prohibitive from one taking the medicine. See, people talk about side effects, but once again, why are you letting a side effect theoretically even interfere with the life threat that's in front of us? You don't know anybody, and you don't know anybody who knows anybody. That's both to you and to all of the listeners. You don't know anybody, and you don't know anybody who knows anybody who has died from taking any vaccine in history. Period. Hard stop. Prove me wrong. We know hundreds of thousands of individuals who have died from COVID-19 in this past year. Why are we having this conversation? Why are we so fearful of this boogeyman instead of the dude that's standing in the corner with a knife who is taking us out on a daily basis to the tune of thousands of us? How does that make any sense?
Well, a lot of social media, and I know you're smiling, but a lot of social media has put stuff out there, and I'm going to go through this one by one so you can dispel what is true or even false. So I heard this, and like I said, it could be true or false. Let me know. I know for a fact the COVID-19 is not actually taking the flu shot. However, is it true or false? Is there a small amount of the actual COVID-19 virus in the shot, like other vaccines, such as the flu, that fights
False.
it out in your body?
False. Next question.
Okay. Some doctors on some media outlets and abroad are saying if you have ailments like diabetes, heart conditions, or asthma, you should not take the COVID vaccine virus. Some doctors are saying you should take it. That conflicts with the other doctors. What should a person do if they have diabetes, heart conditions, or asthma who may be debating on whether or not to take the vaccine?
You don't get to do that. This is intellectual radio, which is why I'm here. We are not providing false equivalents to so-called some doctors. Who are they? What doctors? Show me some doctors that are saying these things. There are no doctors who are practicing medicine in the United States that's saying what you just put out there. So once again, you do a disservice, respectfully, in providing two sides of the coin. These two sides of the coin are not equal. There are no some doctors saying this. The correct way to phrase that concern is if there is an overwhelming consensus in the scientific community that those who have depressed immunity, who are immunocompromised, or who have significant comorbidities should take this vaccine. Hard stop, period. If I find one Yahoo out here that says something, I'm not going to come on your show and answer a question that says, well, there's some doctors over here and some doctors over here. No, there is an overwhelming consensus in the medical, scientific, and public health communities that this is safe and effective in all populations above age 18, including individuals with comorbidities and those who have depressed immune statuses, period. I don't care what you can get anybody to say anything. Trump found somebody to actually talk about herd immunity and letting this disease wear itself out by dying thousands of times. No, that is not reflective of what's being told as a recommendation by the medical, scientific, or public health community. So let's frame it correctly. Social media, these are not sources of information. These are social platforms. If you want to frame these questions in a way that is meaningful, and I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the public, then talk about this recommendation that comes from the CDC or from the World Health Organization. Those are viable sources of information. Now, it is fair and reasonable to say that, well, most people seem to get their information from social media, so we have to address it. But that doesn't make it credible. So we can address these things as a means of refuting them, but let's not pretend for a second that there's any type of equivalence in saying some doctors over here and some doctors over there, because, you can find in 320 million Americans, you can find somebody to say everything.
Also on social media, if a person is overweight, should they have concerns taking the vaccine?
They should have more concerns about not taking the vaccine. Obesity is a dramatic comorbidity for bad outcomes from COVID-19. There has been nothing to suggest that obesity poses an enhanced risk for taking the vaccine. The risk is in the disease, not in the vaccine. Or stop.
Bell palsy and the effects they are having in taking the vaccine. First, can you explain, because this has been going on social media, like I said, what is Bell palsy to our listening audience and viewing audience on IntellectualRadio.com/iHeart radio station, and the effects they may have or may not have in taking the vaccine? Because more people saying you may have Bell palsy if you take the vaccine. Again, social media. I know you're laughing, but it's social media.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm literally, it's a smirk. It's not a laugh.
Okay.
Because you're asking me a question, and I love the way you phrase that question, by the way. I criticized the other, but I'm going to praise you on this one. People are criticizing something that they don't even know about. How are you going to come to me with a concern and say, well, what is Bell's palsy? Well, I'm afraid of men on Mars. So what's my risk of getting shot by a man from Mars today? That's the nature of this conversation. Okay? So Bell's palsy is a seventh nerve derangement where you get temporary paralysis of one of your facial nerves, period. Now, the question is, should you be concerned about Bell's palsy ever? Well, okay. 80% of cases of Bell's palsy, when they occur in the general population, resolve spontaneously. Okay. Now, next question. There's a rate of occurrence of Bell's palsy. Okay. Let's understand that. There is a rate of Bell's palsy that occurs in the general population. Hard stop. Next question you should ask, that you should have asked, is the rate of Bell's palsy in the COVID-19 population more or less than it was in the general population? See the difference? Because if you say, hey, somebody in the study group got Bell's palsy. Ooh, I'm afraid of Bell's palsy. Well, guess what? There's some people in the study group that actually died or were obese. Well, correlation is not causation. You present that as if somehow the entity created the outcome. Now, the answer to the question is that the incidence of this Bell's palsy that nobody even knows about was actually less than it was in the general population. Let me restate that. Bell's palsy has an incidence that exists in the general population anyway. 4 people out of tens of thousands of people, 40,000 or so people in the study, 4 people, look up at me, I'm telling you this, 4 people got Bell's palsy. You're excited about 4 people? That rate of contracting Bell's palsy in this study was less than occurred in the general population. Do you understand that? So why are we sitting here talking about Bell's palsy? If anything,
because it's out there.
No, that's a rhetorical question. It's not out there. It's fear. There's a qualitative difference between fears and concerns. We need to spend our time on IntellectualRadio.com, iHeartRadio, educating people about facts.
Well, that's why you're here.
Good information. That's right. And that's why I'm talking to you. We want to spend our time educating people about facts and empowering them to make good decisions. You can't play whack-a-mole with every crazy supposition that comes up in somebody's mind. You cannot disprove a negative. People might say, as a result of hearing this, oh, Dr. Sterling is actually showing passion. Maybe he got the vaccine a week ago and now he's going crazy. How can you disprove that? You can't. It is not even a reasonable supposition, and you dishonor, not you individual, we dishonor the process by giving it air. You cannot air every crazy theory out there because, first of all, people that are crazy enough to not be concerned, concerns are good, but to fear this craziness aren't going to be moved by facts anyway. You have vaccine deniers that are looking for confirmation bias. They are simply looking for a reason not to take it. I want to spend my time educating people that are truly on the fence, that truly have concerns and need accurate information to help them get to where it is. There's nobody listening here that's going to say, oh, you started this off with a disclaimer. Don't even listen to Dr. Sterling says, go talk to your primary doctor, which is actually half true. But the point of the matter is that if that indeed is the case,
well, it was to protect yourself in the station as well.
And that's why I asked you to do it. But the point of the matter is that there's nobody listening that has a fear of Bell's palsy that's going to say, well, wow, only 4 people got it out of 40,000 people. And that's less than the rate of people who get it in the population. Oh, I didn't know that. That's okay. No, what people want to hear is that it's really very basic and very fundamental. Look at the incidence of disease cases and disease deaths over the history of vaccine projects in the United States, and look at how significantly the number of cases and the number of deaths from these pandemics, these epidemics, and these major diseases just got obliterated by implementing vaccine programs. That was true for smallpox, which was eradicated from the face of the earth by a vaccine trial. The influenza epidemic of 1918 and 1919 killed millions of Americans, and we've whittled it down to tens of thousands of people a year. Still here 100 years from now, but it was so much less than it was. Polio, if someone is old enough to remember the 40s, it was horrible. Millions of people dying. It's better. The reason we give kids measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus vaccines is that all of those infectious diseases kill hundreds of thousands and millions of us per year until they were developed. It is the exact same situation now with COVID-19 as existed then with those childhood and otherwise lethal diseases. And the way out of this on the back end is going to have a safe and effective vaccine. All that said, we now have 2 vaccines built in the United States that are 95% effective, that have strong safety profiles. We can do better for our community. We can do better for our nation by engaging in accurate information and educating people that it's going to be okay. The physician community, myself included, has paraded ourselves across social media and otherwise, showing ourselves getting vaccinated and subsequently reporting that I haven't grown horns or otherwise had anything adverse happen to me. People want and deserve accurate information. We can do better than the whack-a-mole game dispelling people's fears because people aren't respectively, again, I'm a physician, been dealing with patients and what they respond to for well over 20, 25 years now. People are going to respond to empowerment and accurate information, not the elimination of 1,000 various fears and conspiracy theories that exist out there that nobody knows from whence they came.
Well, speaking of those fears and stuff like that, we listen to media all the time. We listen, some people, a story the other day, the FDA said it recommends watching for Bell palsy and Pfizer vaccine for recipients. And this comes from the FDA. Then you have the CNBC report. Wait. Hold on 1 second. I understand what you're saying, but what
Of course you should. I'm not going to stop. Of course you should watch for it. What does that say? Because I'm asking you to watch for it. I teach you every day. I tell patients every day, look for signs of cancer, look for signs of a heart attack, look for signs of stroke. That's not to say that correlation is causation. We are telling you, yes, if something goes on with you, let's look for it and let's report it. If indeed this Bell's palsy thing proves to be something, we want to know about it. If you see something, say something. That is not the same as suggesting that we are validating the fact that Bell palsy is a problem in the vaccine. So look out for it and tell us. Those are not the same things, and please don't represent it as such.
I'm not representing. I'm just going by what's out there, sir. The other one is the CDC is also say the vaccine may cause allergic reaction or some type of allergies in taking the vaccine. What are your thoughts on that? Again, go ahead, sir.
No, okay. And is that supposed to be prohibited from taking the vaccine?
Well, only thing I'm saying is there's allergic reactions or allergies in taking the vaccine. I mean, those reports are out there. So what I'm saying, go ahead.
What's the incidence of? See, here we go. I'm coming at you. What's the percentage of individuals who get these adverse reactions, who get these side effects? Do you know?
Say that one more time. What are the percentage? I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. What are the percentage? I don't know the answer to that. That wasn't in the CDC.
There are no significant side effects that occur at a rate beyond 0.1%. The most common side effects are things like fatigue, muscle arm soreness, redness at the muscle site. Those are the side effects you get. Basically, the side effect profile are the side effects you get if somebody jabbed a needle into your arm. All the things that you're talking about are theoretical side effects that don't occur often enough in those vaccinated for any individual to be concerned enough about it for it to be prohibitive. Will it occur? Yes. Okay, because effects, side effects, adverse reactions, and diseases are all expressions of risk. So if I told you that there was a 1/10 of 1% expression, that's 1 in every 10,000 people. Okay? So if 1 million people took it, then that means 100 people out of 1 million people actually had some type of allergic reaction. Now, 100, would you play the lottery with those odds? If I told you 999,900 people were going to win the lottery and 100 people weren't going to win it, you take those odds all day, every day. And keep in mind, the conversation that we're having here is about a vaccine that is 95% effective in preventing death. So why are we focusing on this other stuff? Now, let me just take a step aside. Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me take a step aside and address the concern that you should be addressing. There are individuals that have a severe history of allergic reactions. We don't want to minimize the very real concerns and the very real risk that exists for targeted individuals. At the same time, we don't want to falsely elevate the negligible or otherwise unimportant side effects or myths or fears that people have. Let's actually rephrase that concern in a way that's important. If they're your listeners or other individuals who have had a history of anaphylaxis, anaphylaxis is a specific type of allergic reaction such that, and it's life-threatening, where your throat closes and you can't breathe and you may have had to be put on a ventilator, a breathing machine to help you breathe. If you've ever had that type of history, then, and you're going to be having this conversation with your physician anyway, then you need to let your physician know that you have that, or you have to remind your physician, I guarantee you we already know, that you have that type of history, and you need to get counsel as to whether or not that individual should be given this vaccine. If you have an allergy to any of the contents of the vaccine, which by the way are salt, potassium, fat, lipids, and a messenger RNA virus, so if you're allergic to that for some reason, which you're not, then you should not take anything that has those components in them. But that, once again, is so beyond rare that to spend the valuable time that we have together talking about that is more of a disservice than it would be a service to talk about those specific individuals who have a history of anaphylaxis or severe allergies. Make sure that before you go and get vaccinated, that you discuss this with your physician and that you get clearance. You know, the part of the conversation that we're not having, by the way, is that nobody's out here getting these things for several months down the road anyway, because the distribution chain and supply is so minimal that we may find ourselves months away from even distributing the vaccine at this point. There's new information coming out daily about how, my God, only 1% of the US population has even received the first half of the dose. And now there are debates about whether to push the general population back even months more than you would have to wait anyway to try to target those individuals who are most at risk, nursing home residents, elderly, those with comorbidities, et cetera. So they may end up getting their first 2 doses before the general population even gets to get in line for their first dose. That remains to be seen. So what that means to your listeners is that, practically speaking, let's not focus on these fears so much today, but let's just take a step back. We actually have a couple of months. Let's see what happens over the next couple of months, and let the side effect, let's let the side effect profile continue to evolve. Let's let all of these fears that you have become quantified and see if any of them become real things about which we could be concerned, in a way that we will subsequently more completely stratify individuals who should hold off on getting the vaccine, like we would say those who have had anaphylactic reactions, for example. You have time. You don't have to make these decisions today. What I'm asking you is that you maintain an open mind. Just let's continue to see what happens for the next couple of months until your number is called. And then you can go to the CDC website, FDA website, et cetera, and recalibrate what you've learned from today or even before today to the time in which it becomes your time to get this vaccine. And then have a conversation with your primary care physician and make the determination at that point. But today, even if I told you something today, the information is going to be qualitatively different than what it'll be in 2 months when it's your turn to get vaccinated.
What you want to tell the African-American community that's listening to IntellectualRadio.com/iHeartRadio station. I went down the list of the rumors and innuendos out there, push back, and I understand that. But what specifically your opportunity right now that you want to say to the people that's putting out the information that's out there, that's putting out, even videos that's out there?
I'm excited. That's what I want you to know. I am excited. I did not expect to be excited, so much so that, think about this. We fear the unknown, folks, and we mock what we don't understand. Our community, even the American community, we should be pushing, we should be fighting our way to the front of the line. We are the community that is dying from this disease. Let's talk about the disease in a disproportionate manner from all other populations in the United States. If we had a cure for something, and this is kind of what Tuskegee was about. Tuskegee, we were allowed to obtain syphilis, and they knew that penicillin was a cure. And we went 40 years without being given penicillin, or the study participants went 40 years without getting treatment for penicillin. That's what this is like, not for the reasons that people come up with the conspiracy theories, but because if there's an opportunity to take a safe and effective treatment for a disease that's killing us, we should be fighting for it the same way that we should have been fighting for penicillin during the Tuskegee syphilis trials. We should be fighting for this vaccine. This vaccine has actually been proven to be safe and effective. And given that the disease itself is disproportionately affecting and killing our community, we should be having the flip conversation about how do we get to the front of the line? How do we push ourselves forward because we're being disproportionately affected? Don't fall for the okie doke. The okie doke is convincing members of our community, hey, this is yet another conspiracy theory. I want to sit back and see if people are you going to grow horns? I want to wait and see. And meanwhile, there are people dying. And half of the people that are dying almost look like us. Don't fall for that. Get yourselves vaccinated at the earliest possible opportunity. And I wouldn't be the same way that I'm on you about some of these questions. That's how I'd be like, that's exactly how I would be, even worse, actually, because you're an ally and I thank you for what you do. But if those guys were trying to perpetrate a fraud on our community by pushing a vaccine that was not safe and effective on the Black community, yeah, that we'd be rearranging some furniture, as we say, because our community of medical and scientific African-American professionals would not be having it. And I'm proud and happy to say that that is not the case. So let's not get it twisted here. Let's make sure that we actually are getting this because it is safe and effective.
All right. There is a new strand or mutant version of the COVID-19. If possible, can you explain to us about the new strand or mutant and what we need to know in order to prepare for it?
Excellent question. The European strain, there are actually 6 strains. 2 has traditionally been in the United States and others are in various parts of the world. There's a distinction with a difference in this example. This European strain actually is different in that it is more easily transmissible. The good news is that it is not vaccine resistant, nor is it more deadly as the way in which it interacts with any one individual. However, it is about 70% more transmissible. But remember, it's only transmissible if you aren't protecting yourselves. So if you're one of the mask deniers or COVID deniers who thinks that you don't need to wear a mask or hand sanitize or social distance or quarantine and isolate, etc., and this European strain comes around, now you're 70% more likely to get infected with COVID-19. And as a result of that, then that means that the numbers that we're seeing are going to continue to grow. Hospital beds are going to continue to be filled, and more deaths are going to occur because people that need to be treated in hospitals won't have any space to be treated in hospitals. So it's not that this strain, is any more deadly than anything we've already seen. It's just that for the unprotected, it is 70% more likely to jump on you and to cause disease. So the message to our community is that if you weren't protecting yourself before, you better start doing it now because this thing is way more efficient at getting at you and causing disease.
Do you agree with Biden on the 100-day moratorium of mask wearing?
I think it's a good start. I think 100 days is completely arbitrary. And I think that he didn't say until it's gone because that would have scared people away. He didn't say 30 days because the bottom line is that we need to put our foot on the necks of this vaccine and get it done. The thing about 100 days is that in the medical community, we're talking about respiratory season. And respiratory season are basically the cold months. And it's during the cold months where people are indoors, huddling indoors, congregating, and interacting with each other in a way that the respiratory viruses like the common cold and influenza and COVID-19, which is much more than that, but also that, tend to jump on us. So the 100-day of mask wearing is meant to get us through the rest of the cold season so that we can tap down or actually beat down the numbers of the vaccine and get sufficient numbers of the population inoculated so that the baseline level of this virus is so low that it functionally has gone away. It won't go away, but functionally, because the reason why we're seeing 3,000 deaths a day now is that didn't occur this past summer, and we jumped off the, to use an analogy, we jumped off the diving board from the highest rung, and instead of starting from the lowest rung. So disease never left; it was already at a high level, and then when you had the respiratory season come around, where our habits were more conducive to the virus exploding again, that's exactly what happened. So this 100-day of mask wearing is meant to give ourselves a break from the virus spiraling out of control and to try to get it to lower to manageable rates where we can get everyone vaccinated and hopefully get past this in a relative way.
We had this discussion before last time you was here on the Drive at 5 regarding masks. People are wearing masks. However, people are making masks or wearing bandanas on their face, or even the masks they are getting from the dollar store or gas station. Which one is effective for someone to be using out there?
Yeah, there's a relative concept and an absolute concept. And there are economic considerations that we need to be respect and be considerate of. The bottom line is that any form of protection is better than no form of protection. However, if you are serious about this and want to offer yourself ideal protection, you simply need to find a medical surgical mask. That's always been the answer to the question, and it will always be the answer to the question. Cloth masks are good, but not great. The N95 masks that we use in the hospitals are great, but not necessary for the general population. The reason why I wear an N95 mask, the reason why I need an N95 mask is because I'm actually in the hospital. I have COVID-19 patients in my face all day, every day. The threat is real, and it's a cumulative risk. So yes, that's why you've been asked over the last year to reserve that supply for the medical professionals that literally are facing this deadly disease. For the type of exposure that exists in the general population, those flimsy little blue and white med-surg masks are absolutely perfect. It's what the CDC recommends. It matches the risk with effective enough treatment. So, some people I see actually doubling up on mask wearing. And, my response to that is that, you can put on 2 layers of cloth mask and it's not adding any additional protection whatsoever. If this cloth is still going to be porous and there are going to be holes that come through it. What you want, if you are obsessive compulsive enough to want to wear more than one mask, make sure that one's cloth and one's of a different type of material, like the med-surg mask that I'm talking about. That's the name of the game. Make sure that if you are using these reusable, rewashable cloth masks, that you wash them daily and that you exchange it out after every group interaction or potential exposure, because otherwise you can touch it, you can put it in your eyes, nose, or mouth for those that do those things, and you can continue to inoculate and at least expose yourselves in those ways. So the simple answer is just those good old-fashioned med-surg masks.
How can you're saying this is cold season, flu season, and how can people build up their immune system? How can people,
Great question.
How can people, get their immune system boost up so they can fight whatever is coming to them?
Thank you for that. This is exactly what we want people talking about, because the truth of the matter is that there are some individuals who, for whatever reason, can't get vaccinated. There are some people who are actually allergic to cloth and other things and can't. It's only a few people, but there's some people who can't. And for those people and for the general population, the answer in all of these things is risk reduction. Okay. And remember, diseases are expressions of risk. So if you have a 5% risk of disease, you're going to get it 5 out of 100 times that you're exposed. But if you only have a 1% risk, you're only going to get it 1 out of 100 exposures and only 5 out of 500 exposures. So the goal here is to reduce your risk. And the thing that we're talking about that reduce your risk, starting from the top to the bottom, and then we're going to flip it. The vaccine is 95% effective. Wearing the correct type of mask gets you upwards of 95% effective. But all of this is meant to support your own native immune systems. And the ways to really combat this, because, even the vaccine is meant to stimulate your own immunity. So the idea there is just be healthy. Watch what you put in your mouth. That's what strengthens you. A diet that's high in fruits and vegetables is so much better than having to take medicine or anything else on the back end, okay? And exercising, stimulating your body builds up your immune system. That is so much better than trying to take medicines on the back end. So if we do these things, these very simple things, lower our stress, engage in healthy eating habits, and engage in activity that strengthens us and provides a baseline level of health, that's the formula all day, every day. Now, there's some special things. We know that 80% of individuals, especially African Americans, that get COVID-19 and have bad outcomes from COVID-19 ended up having a vitamin D deficiency. So if you're into supplements, I hear people talking about elderberry and all other kinds of things, but the two things that we can suggest you might want to play with are zinc and vitamin D. And you don't have to do anything other than take a multivitamin. But the real thing in terms of strengthening your immunity is just be healthy. Do the things that would make you healthy anyway. Diet, exercise, stress reduction. And if you have a disease like diabetes or if you're obese, reduce the severity of those conditions, and that will get you to where it is you want to be, because 90% of the people that get COVID-19 actually spontaneously recover. And they are recovering because their immune systems are strong. So we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to maintain strong immune systems. And thank you for that. That's such an important question for the audience to stew over and to see if they're willing to engage in some healthy eating and activity habits.
People are getting used to wearing masks. However, they do not know how to properly breathe inside of a mask. What are some of the techniques a person can use properly breathing inside of a mask? Because if you're an asthmatic, it's hard for someone to breathe when it's covering. Any techniques that someone that's not used to wearing a mask, breathing techniques?
Another great question. Thank you for that. This is practical information that people can use. My number one strategy for people that have problems wearing masks is to understand when you need to wear a mask. Okay? There are people that are over wearing masks. Okay? Imagine that. You hear me saying this after being such a proponent of masks. The correct time to wear a mask is whenever you can't socially distance. And that means that if you can socially distance, meaning that if you're home by yourself or if you're driving in your car, take off the mask, it's okay. So by doing that, you actually reduce the contact time that mandates you're needing to wear a mask. So if you're that asthmatic, then what that really means is, hey, it's okay to take off the mask. You don't have to be in fear and to be obsessed with wearing it all day, every day. But when you do have to wear it, you need to wear it. So if you need to wear it, you need to wear it. There are no techniques. The technique that you can use is that if you're having any difficulty breathing, you need to socially distance. You need to remove yourself from the environment so that you can take a breather, take the mask off, recover, get to where it is you need to be, and then re-engage. Remember, the time to wear a mask is whenever you can't socially distance, but you need to wear the mask. And by the way, do not wear those masks that have those vents in them. I don't know why people think that a vent is a good thing. The vents are open enough that the virus particle can just use it as a front door. Those masks are not recommended, and they certainly are not effective.
Okay, we're almost running out of time. And thank you. I know you got some fun out of me beating me up on his.
That's because you're my guy. Look, this is intellectual radio, so you have to bring it, especially if you're going to keep inviting me on. I enjoy our interactions, and you asked some great questions, and I do appreciate why you wanted to address the fears. But knowing me as you do by now, you probably even knew how I was going to respond to some
Yeah, I
of this.
did. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah,
So
say that
for
now. Had to try it. Go for it.
yeah, no problem. So for our listening audience, any last words that you want to say? Give you an opportunity before we sign off. Hello?
We care deeply about what happens to the African American community in specific and the American community in general. There is no, this goes back to the other question from before. There is no equivalence between a doctor saying something and what the consensus report is of the World Health Organization, the CDC, the National Medical Association, the American Medical Association, the American Public Health Association, doctors, scientists, public health professionals. There is no disagreement on any of this. So if you choose to spend your time getting your information from conspiracy theorists and vaccine deniers on social media, that stuff will drive you crazy. Don't do it. Take a step away. Any piece of information that you want to know, you can go to cdc.gov and type it in the search engine. That's where the accurate information is coming in. And certainly don't allow people to tell you that the established sources for information are somehow fraudulent. Don't fall for that. You allowed me, you fought generations ago so that my colleagues and I of color could get into medical school and get PhDs in science so that we could provide this service to the African American and the American communities. We are here now. We are here to protect you and to represent your interest, and we're doing our best jobs in trying to do that. So always know that I and my colleagues are here protecting the interest, and by no means am I going to give you any bad information that would put you in harm's way. So that's our message, and get good information, please. Just that simple.
All right. How can people get in contact with you?
JeffreySterlingMD.com. And that's @SterlingMD on Twitter and other social media channels. And I'm on Facebook. Look for us at SIMCO, SIMPCO. We are here to provide health information and advice and to educate you and to empower you. We don't care what choices you make. You get to be empowered and to make your own choices. We simply want to provide you information so that you can do what you believe. But we're not going to debate you. We're just here to provide you with information and hope that you live a long, happy, productive, and great life. That's really all this is about. I certainly am.
All right. Thank you. Don't be a stranger to the Drive at 5, sir. That's going to do it for us on this Monday evening. Thanks to Ora Winfrey, our executive producer, Wanda, who's behind the scenes. Happy New Year's to you, Dr. Sterling. And Happy New Year's to everyone on IntellectualRadio.com. Leaving us out is Jay Rockwell. Be blessed. Be blessed, everyone.
That's right. Tell the girl she blessed. That's right. That's right. That's right. Tell somebody they blessed. That's right. That's right. Yeah, hug somebody. Don't it feel all right? Don't it feel